Second, I'll go ahead and welcome everyone since it's 10 o'clock, and of course more people are trickling in, which is wonderful. Hello everyone, it's so good to see you all. Welcome to the Bentley Rare Book Museum's virtual Coffee with a Curator program. If it's your first time, we're so happy that you're here. If you've been attending, we're also, of course, so grateful that you are one of the frequent attendees and make time for this in your week. So thank you for that. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I've been pushing this, so I'm sure you all have heard. But if you haven't heard, tomorrow, October 14th at 3:00 p.m., I'm opening my new exhibition in the Bentley Rare Book Museum. It is called Collecting Stories, 35 Years of the Bentley Rare Book Museum. And as the title indicates, this exhibition celebrates 35 years of rare books at KSU, thanks to the vision of Mr. Robert Williams and Mr. Fred Bentley Sr. I strive to illuminate the stories behind the books in our collection in the Bentley, stories of production, distribution, ownership, preservation, and numerous years of interpretation. Overall, my exhibition strives to honor and to promote the art of book collecting. So I sent some of the logistics, some of the parking and directions details to you all via email last week. And so some of you followed up with that. But if you have not received that or you need more info about tomorrow getting here, if you're interested in coming, parking, whatnot, just send me a message and I'll be happy to talk to you further. And on the day of, if you have any issues getting here, be sure to call our department number. Maggie, do you mind putting that in the chat for me? Our department main line, because we're going to be answering that up until 3:00. Then most of my colleagues will be downstairs, but please do give us a call if you need that so that we can help you get here. And so anyway, don't want anyone to have to be stressed on the day of. And just so y'all know,
be there?
No. Yeah, you can come. I think that would be good. Just. Mr. Williams, I will say you're going to be in for some exciting surprises tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, I think you should look. You're going to be in for some surprises. I think you're going to be very happy at the end of the
I know what you can do.
Yes, so I'm really excited. And so next week, just so y'all know, we're actually not going to be meeting next week. So that's October 20th, because my colleagues and I are going to be participating and presenting at the Society of Georgia Archivists annual meeting. So we will not be meeting. But I think that's all of the housekeeping. And thank you, Maggie, for adding in our department line into the chat. We appreciate that. So we will go ahead and get started. We are going to do our segment, Where's Andrew? Okay, Andrew, would you like to tell us? I know this is a special one.
I'm hoping everyone knows where I am, that at least someone gets it. Can we move out of the way a bit?
Well, my goodness gracious, I've been there.
Absolutely. So would anyone like to throw out there, if you recognize where Andrew is? Anybody want to say it? If you know it.
Campus.
Yeah.
Yay!
It's the Sturgis Library.
But what year is that picture from?
Well, I did a bit of digging and I found that Mr. Williams was first hired in 1986, and this is actually from that year's yearbook.
Yay! So, Andrew,
that's cute.
That is awesome. I love that. Love that connection. So, Mr. Williams, can you believe it? Mr. Williams did come to Kennesaw as library director in 1986, so 35 years ago. You're not going to show
a picture of me, are you? You're not going to do that.
Mr. Williams, can you tell us a little bit? I want to hear, before we begin our formal program, can you tell us a little bit what Kennesaw College, right, was like in 1986?
Let me tell you a story.
Okay.
Dr. Siegel, I came here to meet I knew Dr. Siegel a number of years before, but to see the campus. And her secretary met me at the airport. And it seemed to me like I was going to have after the stop, before we got to the campus, I thought we'd have to stop overnight somewhere. It was so far away. We drove and we drove and we drove. And they were just beginning to finish the big mall here. Otherwise, it's all pine trees, pine trees, pine trees, pine trees. So I said to Mary Lou, wouldn't it have been better if I just come to Chattanooga and come down here? She said, no, we're in Atlanta. I said, this is a long way away. So we pulled up to the campus, and Andrew is somewhere just right about at the base of that building on the left. There's a parking lot, and there was about 10 cars parked in it. So she pulled in, and she said, we'll go to see Dr. Siegel in her office. I looked around. I said, Mary Lou, is this branch campus? She said, no, this is, and what's the thing first thing she told Betty when he got in? Mr. Williams thinks this is the branch campus. And Betty, what? So it was a much different experience then. I think we've been about 4,000 some students, but and scattered all through the week. So you've never had a very big crowd. Mm-hmm. But it was a really nice, pleasant place to come to. Very different from what I thought. I never told Betty this. I think I'll stay 2 or 3 years and then I'll move on. But it didn't work that way. It was natural joy. There is something about Kennesaw, which I had to say this was always from the first moment. Students, faculty, the campus, small as it may have been then, and goodness knows it's not small now, but all that, it seemed to me like a genuine college family. I really thought it was that way. But this is different from where I've ever been, because I've been to some pretty fancy places. I've worked for some pretty big places, but I thought this is different. There's something personal about here. And so I stayed.
You did stay. And, I've always thought that was interesting because you weren't looking for a new job when you.
No. Betty was one. I was at a college, a university in Kentucky, and she was on the board. And I have to give you another story on that one. Betty was and what was his name? A man who was president of Tennessee Tech, was a graduate of the school too. And that morning, President called me about 6 o'clock in the morning and said, I need you in the campus center to speak to the board. And we've got a couple of presidents, and I need you to speak. I said, on what topic? I said, I don't care. He said, you can usually talk about anything. That is so flattering. I have to be honest, it is so flattering. So I said, fine. So when we got there, Jim, the president, said to the group, well, I had to bring over Robert Williams to speak today because the man who was going to speak to us this morning dropped dead last night. I thought, what a good way into him. So I started talking. I had no plan. So Betty stopped me about 10 minutes in the conversation. She said, hold on. If you never met Betty, she had a Mont Blanc pen in one hand and a notepad in the other. And she started waving, stop. And Jim looked like he was going to have a cow. Maybe I had really, botched it. She said, stop. What did you say you did here? I said, I'm the library director. No, you're not. And she said, you can talk. So she said, let's just quit talking over here and go over and see what he's got. And that's how it came about. And then we were having graduation. And before the graduation is finished, she announced in public, I've asked Robert Williams to come, Bob, she always called me Bob to come and to Kennesaw and work there. First time I ever heard it. So, and my answer to her was there. And after I came down here, much as I liked it, I was happy where I was. I said, no. It's the only time I ever saw Betty slap her hand down on her desk and say to me rather firmly, no one listen to me, not even my husband tells me no.
I feel like that's probably true.
Though I did not come. That was earlier. And then it took another 3 years, I think, before
Mhm.
I got the call again. She needed me to come down and do something. And she asked me again. I said, I really like where I am. She said, just cut that out right now. I told you once, you don't say no to me, and I'm getting ready to cut the paperwork for you. It didn't quite work that simply, but I had no desire to come here, but when I did, well, the other thing is too, Sir Ellen, when I arrived, it had an almost 2-year drought here, not a drop of rain, not a drop of rain. The day I came to work, the drought broke. We had it was, so is that a good sign or a bad sign? I don't know.
That's a good sign. That must be some kind of good luck or good omen. That's exciting. Oh, I'm so glad you told us that story. Thank you so much for setting the scene for us in 1986. So now we have the setting. And as you all know, today, I mean, of course, tomorrow is our exhibition opening, but today I think really begins the celebration of a vision, because Mr. Williams came here as library director, very strongly encouraged by Dr. Siegel, I guess we can call it that. But one thing that Mr. Williams immediately noticed is that KSU did not have a rare book program and needed rare books if we were going to go to the next level. And so today is going to be kind of a really big story time. And because I think one of the things that I hear the most when I introduce people to the rare book room, they'll say, at Kennesaw, really? Or they'll say, at Kennesaw, how did this book get here? It's not a place where they would think. And when they think of rare books, people don't think of Kennesaw all the time, but they're starting to now. They absolutely do now. So we're going to go and get into some of the incredible stories behind the books in our collection, some books that have stories that came with them, or stories that Mr. Williams can now tell because he got them in such an interesting and serendipitous way. So we're going to talk about that. So Mr. Williams, I know we talked about a couple books that you might want to bring out, and I know a few attendees have some stories they want to tell. So Mr. Williams, you want to start us off with one of the ones that we discussed?
Let me just explain how we came to the rare book. That was a field I had studied. When I came here, the second day I was here, Betty had a supper at her house, which I was invited, and Fred Bentley was invited. Now, Fred, if those of you didn't know Fred was a great talker. Now, I'm not a talker, you do know that. The two of us sucked all the air out of the room that day. But we set out on a plan to build a rare book collection, because I really didn't think the school could do it unless we really had a commitment to it. And so it began there. But let me just say one thing, Ellen, about collecting, whether it's books or anything else. There are two ways to collect. One is to have. I've got 55 things I like on the shelf. And how many people you know that? And their book collections are like that too. I read these, these books. I like them. That's a nice collection. But what we're talking about are the books which we collect in our mind, in our soul, in our heart. And those all have stories to us. And sometimes those stories have more than one story. Sometimes you collect things simply because it's unexpected to find. And sometimes you collect something because it's personal to you. You find something in that to collect that no one else seems to even bat an eyelash. Other things sometimes can be historical. Oh, I didn't know that we could ever have something so close to this. And then there's sometimes things are just plain dang funny. Just that idea of what you see in that is so much, it's a gut ripper. You just couldn't stop laughing when you see it. So, Earl, I think we show us, some books to examine that all have something like this. Now, let me just explain one other thing. No matter what you find, it's personal to you. Mm-hmm. And if you can find and pull out those stories, that book has a larger life than it did before you met it. And if you're able to talk about it, people beyond you will be able to find and see that life of that book. And so, Joylyn, if you don't mind, you started off on your note to me the other day with the Fourth Folio.
Okay, that sounds good. So I have it right here, and y'all, this is a tome, beautiful one.
Heavy.
Heavy.
And this is one girl that goes right here, and people say, you know, I didn't think you all would have anything like this. This is one you would not expect kind of thought to have.
Yeah.
This is indeed something you would not expect us to have.
And
George, you
I
want me to tell my story about how I came by it?
Yes, and while you do that, I'm going to just show people, since I can't really open it and show everyone, I'm just going to show a couple pictures. Yeah, so you continue talking and I'll just show some pictures.
Well, one year, it's been over 30 years, Joellen.
Yep.
Now you want your head like you know.
Well, that's true. So I guess I was probably an infant at this time. I was just being born.
But you were already by osmosis absorbing this idea.
Yes.
So I was, as you realize, those of you who are at the school realize that you have two budgets. You have public funds and you have private funds. And some things simply have to be spent by the end of the year. And gifts funds or private funds you must spend, or you used to have to do it that way. So I had $2,500 left in the year's budget, and it was in June. And I was thinking, what's a good way to get some money for this? And this was in a Sotheby's catalog, which had it listed for, I think, 58,000 pounds then. That's a fair amount of money, and worth a lot more now. But I didn't even think about buying it. But I got this little note with it. If you make a bid, because I was already registered with the auction house, if you make a bid this time, then we'll give you $5 off the next catalog you want to buy. Well, I was getting ready to buy a $50 catalog, and my heart just wanted $5 off my $50 catalog. There was just no other way around it. So I made a bid of $2,500 on this 58,000 pound book. I knew that they were going to laugh at it, but I still got my discount, and that's all I wanted. Well, 3 days later, I got a long distance call. Remember, London is 5 hours off of us, from the auction company saying, Professor Williams, did you perchance, and you always love this when they start this, did you perchance leave your Z off your bid? Skip a zero. Well, no, I didn't bid $25,000. So I had to explain that. And I'm a Southerner in America. And that's not all I'm going to say. So I ask questions and talk about what the weather was like here. So nice to hear from them. And you could tell that they weren't interested. Then I thought, and I just said, $25,000, if that's what I had bid. And let me repeat to you, I did not bid that. That's not 58,000 pounds. Then it was $90,000. Yes, he said. And that's all he said. I understand. And I realized he's going to ring off. And I said, well, would you just tell me before you hang up, how many people bid on the book today? I just wondered, 1,000 people? No, he said, 3 people. 2 other people and you. And they bid right on the money. Now, for some reason, I thought, let's just have a conversation. And so we were going. Now, I have to be honest, I forgot to tell you the most important thing in the catalog. It was what was then called an arcade auction. Arcade used to mean, it's in the hallway, an auction company, that it had been up for sale for 3 or 4 times, and they have not sold it. Arcade means it's got to be sold. Now, if you know much about buying, and let me just instruct you on this, that when you buy books from auction companies, if they don't sell all of them, they have 3 options. They can get rid of it for you, or they can return it to you. They could not return this book to the owner. He was dead, and he'd been dead for 10 years. This was a probate sale. It finally come to the end of the Chancery courts, where they said, get rid of everything and clear the counts. Oh, I said, who was this person? He was a well-known Don at Oxford. Oh, that sounds fine too. And I said, you're going to sell the book today, aren't you? Yes, he said, you're more perceptive than I thought, Mr. Williams. I love it. condescension. But as it is, I realized what he's got. It's always, whether it's a junk dealer in Marietta or whether it's a big auction house, if they have to dispose of the books, they have a private buyer for everything that doesn't sell. And they've got a pennies on pennies for the sale. They know what they've got. And I said, why did you call me? And he said, well, you do know the expression, the sheriff is at the door. It usually means it's ordered, you have to do it. He said, the sheriff is at the door today. We must sell by 4 o'clock London time today. And I said, why are the 2 others not getting the bid? Well, he said, very Shakespearean, there lies the rub. And I thought, well, isn't this exciting? And there's just something in good old Southern hillbilly man like me. I think I'm in the right place at the right time. He said, neither of the other 2 can raise the money before 6 months. Well, I said, you normally will loan to people a short tide over loan. He said, yes, Professor, short tide loan is fine. 6 months does not qualify as a short-term loan. And I said, what do you want of me? Can you raise your bid above 2,500 American dollars? I said, no. I said, and then he paused. He said, and if we accepted your bid today, I've said $2,500 American, how soon can you get it? He said, I said, how soon do you want it? He said, by 4 o'clock this afternoon. Well, I called most of you never knew Roger Hopkins, the vice president for finance. I called Roger. I said, hold on. To Diane, my secretary, Diane, call Roger, bring the phone in here to me, pull that cord over here to me. I want to talk to Roger. So I did. And Roger said, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Bob, you think we ought to do it? I said, yes. Can we get it done before 4 o'clock? Yeah, I think this is mid-morning. He said, yes, we got plenty of time. We'll have the bank wire that to them. It should be there shortly. So he said, give me the account number and the exact amount of money and let me call the bank. Nobody did the electronically then. So after about 15 minutes, Roger said, they have the money. And I heard the man on London say, we have your money. And so I got it. Now he charged me like $200 to get it shipped. Good deal. Good deal. Now, to me, this is a perfect book collecting story. All of you will say, today you can buy that book. Occasionally, Joel, we saw one for $300,000-$400,000. These things come and go, but it's an extra good deal. And it makes our friends over at the other great rare book collection, Emory, jealous because they don't have what we do on Shakespeare. But you don't expect, Joellen, or anybody else in them. Kennesaw has that. Who gave that to you? Oh, we bought it one day. What? I often told that story to students because I always had students tell me this. I'll never find anything that's really valuable. Yes, you can. The only operative expression I ever have to you is this. You can if you know how to look and if you will be patient. Occasionally, something pops up. Now, I admit, I don't have another good dollar story like that in my career. But that's one great thing that you can all keep saying. I could probably afford $2,500 if I knew where it was. And so you just have to be willing to wait.
I love that story so much. It reminds us that miraculous things can happen when you look for books. And if you, yeah. And Mr. Williams, whenever you tell that story, I don't know why this pops in my head. I have this image of the old phone cords. I just imagine phone cord here and phone cord there, and just
big long curly cord. I was talking to the man in London on my phone, which had a really long cord. So I got halfway down the hall to Diane, and she had her cord, which had a big long cord down there, and she was trying to hold it over there so I could shout in the phone. And It's such a different world.
I know.
But let me reiterate this to all of you. Don't be afraid to look. Now you have to know something. Let me explain. You need to know when you see the word no reserve in a catalog. Now that doesn't always mean exactly what it says, but it means that they probably won't cancel it. But I buy for myself other antiques from sales which have been around the bush 2 or 3 times. It doesn't mean they're no good. They just didn't meet the right buyer at the right time. And so in this case, there's nothing wrong with that book, Joel. Every time you pick that book up, I see your face glow, and you gloat that the other people don't have this, and you've got some second folio parts too. And doesn't that make you proud? Yes. And I know full well that you and probably everybody here, if you'll look, you'll find something, maybe not quite so valuable, or maybe more so, if you're just at the right place at the right time.
Absolutely.
Is that a book story, Gerald? I don't know. Is that a book collecting story?
That is a book collecting story if I ever heard one. That's a book collecting story. So thank you for that. Barbara has an interesting question. And she's asked, was the Folger Library aware of this listing? I wonder.
Yeah, I'm sure they were. What do they need another one for?
That's what I was thinking. They probably don't need another one. They've got so many.
In fact, I used a Folger on this for a repair we made. The frontispiece by Droshat is a facsimile. And he didn't have it. And I contacted them to get this picture. And it's the one in the first folio, or it's a facsimile of it. But it is a marvelous facsimile. It's on really high-class wove paper. It has somewhere on it a little bitty facsimile microdot that says facsimile. And Joy Ellen's showing you some really great art. Now,
yeah, I'm showing you the actual fourth folio that we have.
Yeah. Now I want to tell you this. This is the English teacher in me. The fourth folio is probably the most valuable of the 4 folios. It is the one that was used from 1585 to probably 1820 or 30 as a definitive copy.
Absolutely. And it actually has 7 plays in there that were later not attributed to Shakespeare.
Yeah, but you see, Shakespeare probably contributed to some of it.
Mm-hmm.
They are really in some ways hilarious, but then you get these really great language in there. And you said, that doesn't sound like the rest of the play. But it really is a significant piece of work. It has for that, it shows us, and I'll put it like this, for a long time, people would say Shakespeare would never have condescended to have contributed to another work. But Joel, you and I know from our Shakespearean acting skits that yes, his plays are they're compilations of stuff. They work together to group and sometimes borrow from each other. So it's a good teaching aid. It's a marvelous teaching aid.
Absolutely.
Observation when she first picked it up. And I loved her for it. The first time she smelled the book. She said, that has a stink. And that's cold. That shows you how it's been in houses for so long. It absorbed the sulfur from coal fires. And so you got history on history.
Absolutely. And I think that is those are the kinds of things that we love to talk about, because the book it has lived a long life even before we got to it. We have our own story that's exciting that we can put on it, but it lived in so many other places before it even got here.
Yes.
So yes, I think that's exciting. Mr. Williams, do you want to tell us, should we look at one of the Chaucer pieces?
Yes, let's take the one that has the note written inside of the flyleaf.
Yes, I'll show it, and then I will do a blow up of the note. This is our Chaucer from, I believe, 1687.
Yes. Now, I was in New York meeting on this one, and I know no one's ever been to a convention. And this was a convention of English professors and antiquarians talking about rare book titles. And I'd been on one of these long panels where everybody just shot the breeze. and I'm being very kind, they shot the breeze. I got a headache after about 5 days. I just simply, and I'm not a drinking person, but I was thinking I could go to a bar and get them drunk. I'm so tired of listening to this stuff. So about 6:30, I had a headache. I was hungry, and I walked out of the meeting, big convention hall, and it's pouring down the rain. And I got to walk to the hotel. Well, about 2 blocks from the hotel was Park Burnett. Now, Park Burnett was a very fine auction company. I think Sotheby's bought them, but I forgot him. So I thought, I don't want to go to the hotel just now, so I think I'll go and see what they're selling. Well, they had an evening sale. And I didn't have to tell you this, evening sales, unless it's got the Mona Lisa, are not always the best things to buy it, because people are going to go home. So I got in, I looked around, they had everything on the exhibition floor, which is about 3 floors up from where the auction was. I looked around. Oh, there, look, isn't that nice? Oh, I'd like that. Oh, that's only $7 million. Yes, I'd like that. You know how you go. And all of a sudden I saw this Chaucer book. And I think they had it for $7,800. That's then was a very good price. That's nice. And then I saw, and the woman who was showing them opened it up and rolled and showed something, and she had no interest in what the flyleaf inscription was. Samuel Marriott, October the 20th, 1743. Is that right, Dr. John?
Wow, Mr. Williams, you got it. That is right.
Yeah, yes, and he obviously had something that last night he said, I perused this good old book, almost everything except I just glanced over on the astrolabe. Well, that's what got me upset. I'd done an MA thesis on the astrolabe. And you know, I had written the world's greatest definitive piece of literature. No one's ever read that except me. And I know that they all missed on great literature. Well, I thought, that's really interesting. Oh, and look, they've got, I've forgotten whether it's, I think it's a Cambridge scholar, and then somebody else. I thought, this is interesting. Well, I didn't have that. And that's not any relation to Ernest Hemingway, but he obviously thought something important. So I thought, well, I must register, and because I want to go in and listen to this, and maybe somebody will have something to say, and it'll be out of the rain. So I got my credit card out, my bank, my checkbook, and I registered, and I kind of, had to promise away my whole soul, because if I bought something, and I went into this room thinking, oh, it's going to be wall to wall. I think there were 8 people there. And the books go real fast in auction. 50 seconds is a long thing. Nothing went on. And I kept thinking, where is that book? I want to see what it's going to sell for. Going to sell for something. Well, it was down toward the end. We were about 11 o'clock at night. And even I was thinking, bathroom break is called for, and we weren't getting it. So he calls up into the book. He said, collected works of Geoffrey Chaucer, gave the date, good binding. He never mentioned the notes in the front, nothing like that at all. He said, we could start at $7,800. Well, let's go at $3,900, because that's usually how they start, by breaking it in half. Do I have a bid of $3,900? Nobody. $3,700, $3,500, $3,000. Do you have a bid of $2,500? On and on. And I kept thinking, I had seen a few months before a revival of Dr. Strangelove and How I Came to Love the Bomb. Those of you who've seen it, remember when Peter Sellers played the German scientist whose hand kept flying up to a Nazi salute. And I kept, don't do it, Robert. Don't throw your arm up like that. Don't do that. You can't afford it. I had $1,000 in my pocket, which was my money for any emergencies. It came to $1,000. I broke into a cold sweat, people. I broke into a cold sweat. Nobody was bidding. Nobody. Now, you have to realize sometimes people are always waiting for somebody else to start. $950, $900, $850. Then he said $825, $800, $775, $750, and look, Dr. Strangelove, whose hand flew way up there. I bid it. My paddle was in that hand. I was waiting. He said, I have a bid from the gentleman in the back row wearing the bow tie for $750. Do I have for $760? $755? Nobody, people. Nobody. We had been at this for 30 seconds. 30 seconds. I didn't know I was going to have a heart attack, have a stroke, or just drop dead out of joy. I might get something. He said, going once, going twice, going third, bang, sold to the gentleman in the back row in the bow tie. Oh, Lord, you don't know. I bid on that book for one reason only. So we already have a copy of it in school. I had already acquired it in school. That was for me. I got my mad money out. I went up to the cashier room, paid for the book, said, do you want it sent? No, I don't. Wrap it up. I'm taking with me. Well, the next day I went to the last day of this conference, and the people at last night had been talking about all the great deals you could get, and they knew, yep. I had my bill of sale from Park Burnett, and I had the book, and I showed it. I made more enemies that morning than you can positively imagine. That's absolutely. People's nose was so out of joint, they couldn't stand it. I was happy. I carried it on the airplane like a little baby. And I kept it in my living room for a long time. I realized that when I moved to where I live now, I think I ought to give this away. But yes, it's a nice historical volume, but it's important because someone read a book and made a note, dated it, and wrote enough note about it, what he thought was important. He was speaking to the future. He had no idea that somebody was going to gag over what he had said, but I'd love to have a conversation and show him how ignorant he is about afterlife. But the point is, there's a book that is personal. You find some.
I was wondering, I think that your note about what you just said about the book being personal is so important. Can I add on to your story?
Yes.
So I went to my Instagram from, I had my own little experience with this book from October 20th, 2020. So this is back when people still weren't really in the office as much, but I guess I was in the office, kind of probably me and maybe one other coworker. And I have a picture of the inscription. You can't really see it, but I've got a picture of the inscription that you were just talking about from October 20th, 2020. And I said on Instagram, one of the most serendipitous experiences you can have as an archivist is when you encounter a record with a date matching the date of the current day. Today, I am working with a 1687 compilation of Chaucer's works. One of the book's previous owners wrote notes about his third time reading the text and dated these notes on October 20th, 1743. I love when this happens. It's like finding a good luck charm in the archives.
Yeah.
So I had randomly opened that book on October 20th, and I just got really excited because I felt like I felt connected to.
It's connecting to you.
Yeah.
Now, it almost connected to me personally. I was born, I don't remember what I'm going to say. I was born the 21st of October, 1942. That book is one day and 199 years older than I am. And so that's almost a connection. You almost pay attention to things like that.
Yeah, you almost pay attention to things that I love all those connections. That's a wonderful story.
It's stories like when you talk about Amish stories. You collect books. You sometimes find things that author writes something about a character you like, and you find that they have made a note to somebody in a book, and that means more to you than it would be to anybody else in the collecting world.
Absolutely.
But also to say to students when we show them books like this is, don't be afraid to make notes in your own books about things you like or don't like. Leave a note for the future.
Yes. Leave a note to the future. That's one I'm going to write that down as a Mr. Williams quote. I love that.
I'm talking too much. I am talking way too much.
No, that's what this is. It's a story time. We don't get enough story time in our lives, but we have been asking. I've been hanging on your every word. So I'll give you a break. I know Andrew has a book collecting story that he would like to share with the group.
Well, I actually brought a couple of books. Let me turn off my background so you can actually see them.
Sounds good.
The first thing that I have that I thought you might appreciate is I do have my copy?
Oh,
Jim?
yes, I have that copy too.
It's from the 60s and it does have, I don't know if you can see it or not, but the asteroid in there.
Yay.
So I brought the actual first book that I ever collected. The Kennesaw Pikes Recreation Department each year has a book swap. We can bring in books that they've read or enjoyed or don't want anymore. I can trade them for books they also want to enjoy. There was always a lot of, what's his name? James Patterson novels. Everyone seems to have James Patterson, but they always seem to disappear. So evidently people also want them. There'll also be a lot of, people also give Bill Cosby biographies, but never take them. But this was actually one of the books that was at the book swap one year. It is Graded Lessons in Physiology and Hygiene from 1909. After several hundred people attending, people did not want to read this somehow, so I got to pick it up afterwards.
Very cool.
But I got it. There were several other medical books that were similar, and one atlas from the 80s. That was also my first atlas, which is, of course, something big I collect. The atlas is big, so I did bring along a smaller one, one that could actually fit inside the door.
So Andrew, so that big atlas, did that essentially started your atlas collection then, right?
Yes.
That's
and
great.
this sort of started the medical collection.
And that started the medical collection. That's exciting. That's what I kind of know you for. So that's really awesome.
The other big thing is there's actually only one book I've ever bought out of spite, which sounds bad, but it's a good story. There is someone I know who he says he comes from a family of parliamentarians. He's very proud of that, and he likes to talk about it. And made this big deal about how he has most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, and if it just after 6 months, he's already made a bunch of notes in it. But he knows someone who claims to be a parliamentarian who has the previous edition, but does not have as many notes. It was not fun to listen to, but so I decided I might as well get my own. I do attend city council meetings, so I think Robert's Rules of Order would be something actually good to have. So this is the second edition from 1886. It's not quite the most recent one, but I still think it's quite nice. It has several notes in it from past owners. It's all different handwriting, strangely. And also has the person who sold it, who was a druggist in Middle Point, Ohio, of all places. And has some nice things, like it has book reviews of Robert's Rules of Order from Senator John Sherman, General Rosecrans, a lot of different people. That's just all that I had to show.
That's
Andrew, you talked about the big, it used to be called the Elephantine Atlas, the big times.
Yeah.
Well, just to give you, kind of make you connect, want to collect stuff like that, is that it becomes it became a fatal weapon in a novel by Dorothy L. Sayers, because she asked for men to take the Times Atlas down a winding iron staircase. You couldn't carry the book in one hand. He had to carry it in both hands. He couldn't hold on. And so he wound up being, one way or another, he got shoved down the stairs and killed himself. So the Times Atlas could be a beginning part of a collection of the books that killed.
Well, I certainly have quite a few very large ones, so good thing we don't have a spiral staircase.
Yes.
Yes.
Be a hazard. That was great. Thank you so much, Andrew. I had one story that I wanted to share, although mine is not like Mr. Williams. Your stories have such incredible endings. Mine, I feel, is a little bit unresolved, but I'll tell it anyway. So I don't know if anyone, especially if you like children's literature, which Mr. Williams, you may have seen this book before, by Elizabeth Fitzgerald Howard. It's called Aunt Flossie's Hats. Yeah, so I was kind of just perusing around Book Nook in Marietta some months ago, and probably looking for an Amish book or something that I could take home. But I saw this, and you know that feeling that you get where you all of a sudden, just feel like, I felt like I was back somewhere I used to be, or I felt like I had like almost like a funny shiver that I was like, I have seen that before. I've where was I? I couldn't know. I didn't know exactly where I was, but I knew I'd seen this before and had interacted with it many times. It was a very pleasant feeling that I had. So anyway, I was like, Abe was with me, my husband, and I was like, don't you know of this book? You know this book, right? And he was like, I don't think I know this book. And I was like, you have to. Everyone knows this book, right? And he was like, I don't think I know it. But anyway, I looked in there, and it's a pretty good copy. I mean, the dust jacket's a little bit worn, but that's the nature of children's books, I would think. And it's signed by the author and dated 1999. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know why no one wants this book. I want this. And so I went ahead and bought it. It's in good condition. And I was reading through it, and I was still getting that feeling that I know this book. I've seen this book before, but I simply couldn't place. I mean, I could almost I was having other sensations where I could feel where I was, but I just couldn't remember. So then I started calling my parents and was like, you guys know this book, right? You remember this, right? And my parents were like, yeah, actually, I think I remember. My sister, I called her, and she said, yeah, that book looks familiar. And we still haven't figured out exactly how we all know of this book, but my dad my mom because my mom didn't, she looked, and it wasn't in our book collection that we have at our house at my childhood home. She didn't see it there. So we think that it actually probably belonged to my grandmother who passed away, but we would go and spend time with her each summer. And I think she might have had this book in her house. And so I probably loved it and interacted with it there. So I think when I had that kind of funny shivery feeling, I think it was because I was remembering my time at my grandmother's house in New Jersey, but I just couldn't. So I haven't definitively I don't have evidence that is exactly where I interacted, but I had the most wonderful feeling that I never want to get rid of. But it's like the book found me or something. So
that's a good story, because that's really what book collecting is about. Mm-hmm. And all books that you like will ultimately have a story. You're still hunting for that final connection, but you know there's one there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's my little story. But I wanted to know, did anyone else have a book collecting story that they wanted to share? If not, I know, Mr. Williams, we've discussed another one, a couple others that you might want to share, but I wanted to open it up.
Are we out of time yet?
No, not yet. We've still got about 10 minutes.
Okay, let me cut one short if you want to. Let's show the green Chaucer, the 1661, 1616.
Yes.
Now, sometimes you come across a book from a reliable dealer. This was not an expensive book, a little over $1,000 on it. It has a coat of arms. It's an Earl's coat of arms on the front. Ugliest green book you will ever see. Victorians loved this battleship linoleum color. It's made to look like Morocco leather, but it's hard as concrete. Been beautifully repaired. If you look on the spine, it says, I think 1616, doesn't it?
1516.
1516. Now, it's actually 1561.
Yes.
Now, open the book to the book plate.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find a book, the dealer here buying it to, and I bought this in Philadelphia from a dealer, very good man, a little bit like me. He will talk about anything to the end of time. So we were talking. I was looking at the book, and I was going to say, I think I'd like this, but I need to make certain. It says something about the Bridgewater library, and it is the coat of arms of the Earl of Bridgewater. Originally, the Bridgewaters were dukes, but that title died out. Now they're very prominent. These are the people who own the Ellesmere manuscript, the very most famous Chaucer piece in the Huntington Library. Well, the man showed the book laying on his velvet lined table. And I said again, oh, look, it says a Bridgewater library. I was waiting for him to say, oh, yes, because I understood what it was. Oh, I said, I looked at the back and I said, there's an error here. They didn't change. They made the wrong date on the spine. They didn't change it. I said, this gold on the cover is not really gold, it's brass. But I guess if you're an Earl and you've got money, you don't spend money on things like that. And correcting it, still didn't pay attention. I said, did you say this book belonged to the Bridgewater Library? He looked at me like, what? And he even had a note on there. It was from the Bridgewater Library. The minute I saw it, my heart just went singing. I'm going to have this book, but I don't want to cheat him. So I said, I think for the fifth time, the Bridgewater Library, he said, mister, I heard you say that the first time. So with a little negotiation, I got my 10% discount and I bought the book. I said, oh, and I used an English expression. Oh, by the by, do you know who the Bridgewaters were? But they own the book. Oh, I said, yes, they did. And I happen to know where the book that was on the shelf with this one was, because this edition of Chaucer was on the same shelf with the Ellesmere manuscript, which was sold to the Huntington Library in the early part of the 20th century. That book, the manuscript, is a multi-million-dollar valuable piece. So when I got home with this book, I did a little homework. Took me all 15 minutes. This book is on the probate of the Chancery Records of the Bridgewaters. It's listed with 7 books that belong to the Bridgewater Chaucer collection. Now, that's historical. That's as important. And it's easy to document that this book was in the same collection on the same shelf with the Ellesmere manuscript. So it is, without a doubt, one of those pleasures to get. I didn't cheat the man. It didn't make it any more valuable to him. But ordinarily, I wouldn't have bought the book unless it had something charming about it. And that was, to me, a valuable piece. And you got some really, well, actually, of the 7 Chaucer first editions, we have 5 of them. But you know, Joel, what I said, we have. I don't work there.
It's still a we. You're always connected. It's still a we. Don't worry.
But there again, is that historical? You find something. Almost everybody will say, I like something about collect war stories or Civil War stories, Revolutionary War stories, or any kind of historical biographies. Yes, but it's rare that you get something so you recognize and you can associate with. And also tells me that Bridgewater, rich as they may have been, were stingy. We had ugly looking binding, we had cheap looking brass colored stuff, and a terror not. Now, can we finish with one more? Sometimes, Joellen, some books are just plain funny to collect. Mm-hmm. I bought this from a dealer too. It's a Forage Painting. All of you know about Forage. This is a Welsh Protestant hymnal and prayer book. It has a lovely, lovely, lovely Forage painting. Enjoy. Can we get a picture of that?
We can. Yeah. I took a picture of it. So for those of you who don't know what Forage Painting is, it's literally a painting that is done on the forage of the book. And usually when it's closed, you can't see it. There are no traces of it. And then it's not until you kind of roll it, which you're not going to be able to really see on Zoom, but
just pretend you're rolling a joint. That way you'll get it.
That's it.
I don't know why.
Williams lets people, helps them understand how to roll it. But I've got a picture. Let me find it.
The fun thing about this book, I just think when I saw it, I started laughing. I just simply about rolled on the floor. The only hymn book, prayer book, they are abstemious people. They don't drink. No alcohol. And what's on the front of that book, Joelle?
A beer wagon.
I thought that was a joke. A lot of times the pictures on a book, it's a book about nature, it'd be fishing or birds or a city thing. You'll have the River Thames or church or St. Paul's or Shakespeare. I think somebody really enjoyed having that picture painted. I think it's just hilarious. And again, that's the other thing about books, is sometimes there is a ridiculousness that you just got to collect. And Geraldine, that's all my stories I'm going to tell.
Oh, those were wonderful. I do have the picture up. It's still, again, I did it myself. So while I tried to roll it and take a picture at the same time, but let me see if I can show so you guys can see a little bit more.
It's fun. See the horse.
You see,
it's obvious there's something about beer and there's a tavern right behind it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Obviously, someone was making fun,
Yeah.
or maybe they were a non-abstemious member of the congregation. I don't know. But the point about this is, if you enjoy this kind of book collecting, you got to look at the books.
Mhm.
You got to find something personal. So I hope I showed you some personal things this morning.
You absolutely did. And we're so grateful. I just want to leave everybody with this one quote from one of a book I found to be really interesting. It was published last year. I may have mentioned it before. It's called The Secret Life of Books. And I know sometimes it can be intimidating because Mr. Williams has such incredible book collecting stories. And it's like, oh, I'll never have stories that match up to that. But we all have our own stories that we will gather as we collect books, and they're all important and they're all interesting and they're meaningful. So if you're not sure how to even think about your books in this way, I found that this paragraph by author Tim Mull gives you some good things to think about. He says, think about one of your favorite books. What springs to mind? You probably remember nuggets of content, episodes in the story, favorite characters, or choice quotations. You might also recollect where and when you read the book. On a pleasant holiday, a long plane ride, a commuter train, a lazy Sunday. You might also associate the book with a particular time in your life and recall how it made you feel or what it made you think. Or you might remember where you bought it or who recommended it or gave it to you. So as you go, I just say, as you kind of, go home today, later on, maybe look at your bookshelf and think about some of those things and just enjoy the memories that spring up, and just kind of let yourself go back to wherever you were when you acquired the book, when you read it, things like that. It'll take you on a wonderful journey.
It does. It just go with a book and find the stories it wants to tell you beside the story. There's more than one story in a book.
Absolutely. Yay. So again, thank you all so much for attending today. Thank you, Mr. Williams, for our wonderful story time. As adults, we don't get story time enough. So we're so grateful for that. And again, for those of you who can attend, tomorrow at 3:00, we're going to be celebrating the Bentley, celebrating Mr. Williams. So please do join us if you can.
All right. See you all tomorrow then.
Thank you. See you ready tomorrow.
Thank you, Joy Ellen. Thank you,
That
Mr.
was
Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Loved
Parker,
it.
for
Thank you.
coming. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.